My PhD is the siting of offshore renewable energy developments in a crowded marine space. So to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, we're transitioning towards renewable energy developments, and some of these are taking place or will take place in the marine space. But the marine space is already home to a host of marine species and other marine users who will need to be taken into account during our energy transition. Right now we're in a climate crisis, and all action we take now will lead to unprecedented societal transformation. So it's not just an ecological crisis, but also a social crisis. Therefore, it's important to make sure the energy transition is a just transition. And this is not just about the distribution of impacts and benefits, but also about who is included in the decision-making process when planning for these renewable energy developments at sea. And the project was formed together with somebody from SSE who have experience in engaging with fisheries while they're planning for their cable routes. It's a really multidisciplinary supervisory team which helped me develop quite a holistic perspective on the issues at hand. I think it was really important to have these different perspectives on my topic, because then they were actually complementary, and it made sure that I included aspects in my work that otherwise I would have overlooked. A large part of my research was about how the fishing industry is currently taken into account during the decision-making process of rolling out renewables at sea. And talking to Sheila's colleague was really valuable to understand what are the really specific aspects of these interactions that can happen at sea that are important to take into account. So it was really valuable to have this operational fisheries perspective into my work, so that I could do a better analysis of how engagement between the fisheries and energy industries are effective when there's possible mitigations so that they can exist in the same space together. The problem that I'm looking at is how the energy transition taking the form of more renewable energy developments at sea can happen in a just way, how it can be a just transition. And I looked at this research problem in two different ways. I looked at the mapping aspects, which is usually the very initial phase of a decision-making process where suitability maps are used to inform where a development goes. And to make this suitability mapping, multiple data layers are needed and then are combined to form this suitability map. For my research, I developed a procedure framework to make this process more transparent, because you start off with some layers that you want to include, and then you have a final suitability map. But in between that, there's a lot of intermittent steps that can affect the outcome. And this is not always clear when you read about suitability map that has been used to inform policy. So I developed a procedural framework so that the user decisions are explicit at each step on the way, so that the process is also accessible for people that will be affected by the outcome of the suitability map, and also to see how policy is included in this suitability mapping process. One of the results from my study were compared to renewable energy targets that are very clear, policies in place to safeguard the fishing industry are not as clear, and therefore the fishing industry don't feel like they are on equal footing when they are making negotiations. So there's a barrier to making these compromises, is that this feeling from the fishing industry that they're not on an equal footing because of the imbalance in the renewable energy industry being backed up by strong policy targets, and the policy associated with the fishing industry is not as clear and time-bound. So I hope that my research can be used to evidence policy making. So for example, right now, the Marine Management Organization is thinking about how to protect the interests of the fishing industry while rolling out renewables. And I think my study can be used to evidence what are the barriers and what are the effective mechanisms to successful coexistence. And then also in relation to the framework I made for making the suitability mapping process more transparent, this could be used by either policymakers or developers or consultants who use suitability mapping in their practice to make their process more transparent and accessible to people who might want to provide inputs to the process. So as an immediate action, I'm currently trying to publish results from my PhD so that they can be used as evidence in decision making. And another plan that we have is to use the procedural framework that we made to compare how different countries around the world are using suitability mapping to inform their strategic spatial decision making of where to place developments. And we also thought it could be interesting to use the framework that combines the justice dimensions and the mitigation hierarchy on a strategic level, and how it could be relevant to also to marine spatial planning decisions. The specific problems that are currently at hand in relation to the energy transition is how existing users need to be taken into account when planning for renewables, because we have a limited marine space and there's a risk that if the whole of the marine space is used to deploy renewable energy developments, there's not enough space for other uses of the marine space, such as, for example, the fishing industry. So by looking at this problem in terms of an energy justice framework, it's possible to see how this problem can be overcome. And this is not just about collecting data and doing a cost-benefit analysis, but really engaging with the people that are already using the marine space to be able to come to an energy transition that works for everybody. So it's been really great to have been part of the Bryden Centre, because it was a nice opportunity to meet the other PhD students that are based in other campuses, as well as to meet everybody that's in the Bryden Centre in Ireland and Northern Ireland. So it was a great network to have, and also a support system for helping each other out with the PhD, and also everybody was involved in different disciplines, so it was really nice to learn about all of these different types of research that happen in terms of renewable energy.